Hey guys, welcome to the game dev discussion. This is the episode 8. This is the podcast where I'll sit down with industry veterans and we'll just have a long form conversation, try to understand some of their motivations, drives, and this is all in the aim of helping newcomers to the industry understand what lays ahead of them. I'm your host Alex Beddows, and just so you know, this is the official podcast of the Dynasty Empire. Today we have lead artist from Crytek, Marcel Schaika. Did I pronounce that right, dude?
Absolutely correctly.
Fantastic.
Hello, Alex.
I'm not an ignorant Englishman.
No, you're
So,
not.
how you doing, dude? You good? Good day.
Yeah, I'm good. Had a good day at work, productive day. Had some dinner, and now I'm here talking to you.
Fantastic, man. I have to say, I really appreciate you coming on. And I said this to you off air. You're kind of you're a unicorn when it comes to an artist. I mean, a lot of artists, the trend is, they have a few years at a studio and they hop about and they move around.
Mm-hmm.
You're not like that. You're a special one. I'll give you that. 12 years, 13 years at Crytek now.
Yeah, it's. I started working at Crytek in 2006, and I've been working there ever since, having a good time making games. You know.
Not some bad games to have under your belt as an artist. I mean, Crisis One, the old meme. Does it can it run Crisis, the old PC meme?
Yeah.
So you started there as a junior, and you're now a lead. Like you've literally gone through like junior artist, environment artist, senior environment artist, lead artist. I'd like to sort of quite focus heavily on that because last week we briefly touched on it with Clinton. I'd love to go into it with a little bit more detail. So if we start with a junior artist, how did it come about? Because you literally sort of came out of uni, did a little bit of like texture work, and then you're a Crytek.
Exactly.
Whereabouts in the Crisis development was the game when you joined, and like what was it like when you first jumped on a game?
Yeah. I mean, I was a pretty ordinary game art student. I wasn't the best, but also not the worst. And I got the chance to help out on like a game for kids, basically, where I take care of pets and stuff like that. And when I was done with that, I applied at Crytek. I knew somebody there who basically brought me into like a good spot when it comes to like the application. And when I started, the project was in alpha state, so I had about 1.5 years left to work on it,
Um,
which was pretty cool. And I still remember the first time like I powered on my PC and there was a test level that I was supposed to use, and I haven't really seen anything of the project besides a couple of screenshots. You know, there was like a guy on an aircraft carrier, a couple of palm trees. Okay, that for me looked just like Far Cry in advanced.
mm-hmm.
But then I started to shoot around in the test level, and suddenly trees were falling down, and I could pick everything up and destroy pretty much anything. I hopped on a tank and drove around, and I just blew my mind. It was unbelievable back then. I mean, I was pretty
Do,
impressed.
did
Nobody
any of
has told me that before.
did any of the development teams sort of, so obviously when the game came out it was pretty much the powerhouse graphical showcase for a good few years. Like it weren't until like past 2010 really we really saw games surpass it easily. During development, did the guys, all the team, know how big a powerhouse it was, or was this sort of a surprise when it came out?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, when you work on something for a very long time, you kind of lose perspective and you don't really realize how good certain things look. You just got like reminded by people that start and look at the things for the first time that basically tell you, man, this is really good. I've never seen anything like that before. So those reminders happen on a like frequent basis, and that was basically the moment we realized that this seems to be something special. But we were really insecure with everything we did. We questioned every single choice that we made, and were trying to do our best that we could do at that time. And we were super happy that people appreciated it visually and also from a gameplay point of view.
Oh, that's cool, man. So like you jumped on as a junior,
Mhm.
just to help everyone understand, what was you've jumped on as an environment artist, am I right in saying, as a junior?
Yeah, exactly.
So what was your
The
roles and responsibilities? Like, what
uh,
did you do? What did you
the
play with?
Yeah, the way we basically made games back then was a little bit different. There was like a strict division between the 3D guys and the level designers. So the environment artists were mainly building asset sets and props and that kind of stuff. And I was the props guy. I did a lot of props, made things breakable. So I took a lot of the huts and basically destroyed them or other objects you can interact with. So making props, chopping things apart, making them breakable, make them float on water. So I was doing like a lot of entity setups and that kind of stuff, smaller things. And the longer I worked on it, the bigger the task became. I
Yeah,
ended up making architectural sets, tunnels, and that kind of stuff at
nice.
the end.
So you weren't just making like these sort of, you weren't modeling it and texturing an asset and then like that's it, the props doing. You were like taking it to the engine, making sure it broke in the engine, behaved correctly in the engine. Like it were just make the asset then give it to the level designer. Like you were making sure it worked actually in the engine properly as well.
It was a pretty tedious task, and nobody was really willing to do it. So I was the new guy. I had to do it.
That's
That was
fair
pretty
enough.
much
I
it.
can understand that. Um, so between so what was the transition like? When did you move up into it as a sort of a regular environment artist? Was that like at the end of Crisis 1 before Crisis 2?
It was shortly after we started working on Crisis 2, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
so first question, and I'm gonna have to ask you to try to be as not humble as possible for this one. What did you do to warrant that promotion? What skills did they say? Right, this guy's got these skills and these skills and these skills. He deserves this promotion. What skills were
hmm
there? Do you think?
Um, I wasn't doing anything special, to be honest. I was working very hard, long hours. I mean, we were not forced to do so, but it was my first real job, and I was absolutely amazed by everything. Surrounded by creative people, they really pushed me to and helped me to get better. So it was a mix of myself being very motivated and people who are better than me around me who really helped me to figure out where my weaknesses were. And at one point, I earned enough trust in the management, so they basically approached me and said, "Hey, Marcel, I think it's about time. You're 1 year in as a junior. It's time for a promotion." So
Oh, really? They
it
approached
was,
you?
yeah.
Oh, that's
I
really cool.
back then was like a lot of game developers and nerds in general, a bit of a shyer introvert person, and
Mhm.
I to me like the people who made Far Cry were unapproachable to me. You know, I was just geeking out every day at work. It was an honor to work with those people, and I was so happy with what I had at that time that it didn't even come to my mind that I should ask for more money or whatever. I was just happy in the position I was
Mm.
back then. You know, I was in my early 20s. Yeah, that's how it was.
That's so cool, man. So like,
Yeah.
how did you notice like a tangible change in your responsibilities or what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, or is it a case of you're doing great, keep doing what you're doing?
I got a bit more responsibility. I went from from building props and that kind of stuff to larger architectural sets. I had the pleasure to do a lot of the buildings in Crisis 2, and people obviously dropped by, gave me feedback and so on. But I was in a nice position because I could just work on it, and nobody was really kind of affecting me too much.
Mm-hmm.
So when you get more responsibility and bigger tasks, you do struggle because you basically do more than you are capable of. So you have to fail constantly to
Yeah.
basically get better. And when you're not stressed out a lot because somebody's kind of like telling you that you're running out of time or whatever, then that this is quite a good environment. I felt safe. I felt like I get feedback that I needed, and I basically nobody was really pushing me time wise. So there was a smooth transition into more responsibility for me, which was nice.
I'd say that sounds pretty slick. That. So you so Crisis 2, you guys are starting that. Was there a lot of pressure on you guys? Because so obviously when you're handling like a big IP game with a
Mhm.
big fan base, so let's take for example a God of War. You know you've got to please the fans. Like the fans are very passionate.
Mhm.
Crisis being what it was like almost a tech demo. Like people really held it to a very high standard in terms of the art. Like it was the benchmark. Was there a different type of pressure on you as an artist? Because it's like it weren't just you had to make good art; you had to make good enough art to keep impressing and setting the benchmark for the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the industry. Did you feel that pressure, or did you guys manage to like distance yourselves from it?
Yeah, sure. We certainly felt that pressure. I have to give some credits to our rendering engine as well, because it was most likely their work and not the work of the artists who made Crisis 1 what it was basically and still is. I think it was mainly them bringing it up to the level of quality that we had back then, and not necessarily the art. But it was still a lot of pressure on our side. Yeah, it was a tricky time if I look back at it now, because it was also the time when we had to make a game on consoles, and we have never done that before.
Yeah,
Um, it was the time when Call of Duty became like really big, and multiplayer became a thing that was also something that EA back then really pushed for. And it was not easy in the beginning. A lot of things that we as a team had to learn to deal with the new platform, with the hardware restrictions and so on. It was tough, but we managed to get it done. It ran smoothly, and we had multiplayer. So yeah,
you have
it
to admit,
was a success at the end.
I remember playing Crisis 2. I actually really enjoyed the multiplayer on PC. Like I remember it didn't on PC. It didn't stick around as long as I wanted it to. Because I actually
Mhm.
quite enjoyed it. Because I remember you had like this meta with like stealth or like the armor, and it was a really fun multiplayer experience. But for
Mhm.
whatever reason, like I remember the PC servers, they were really really active for about a year,
Mhm.
and then other stuff came out and they started to drop off a little bit, which is a huge shame because I really enjoyed that game. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, go on. What were you gonna say?
No, it was the first game, multi-platform game they made back then, and there was just so much competition when you just
Mm,
look at Call of Duty and Halo and so on. They put a lot more effort into the multiplayer part, and I think for us it was a good start to go in that direction. But yeah, it didn't last longer than, like you said, maybe a year or two, where people were really active in the community.
mm. So moving on, you've been how long were you an environment artist for before you made the step up to a senior?
I think it was always like a year or a year and a half for each of the promotions. So 3 or 4 years in, I became a senior artist.
Okay,
That was um, at the end of C2 or the beginning of C3. Yeah,
right.
around that time.
And so just to repeat the questions a little bit, what
Mhm.
was your so start with like you? What do you think you did to say right this guy, he deserves the promotion, he does this, this, and this? Was it a case of you did stuff and they wanted more of that, or was it like right we see he could do this?
Mhm.
Yeah, what was it you
Um,
think got you that role?
the philosophy that we have with the company is that if you want to have a promotion, you basically need to do the job already in advance. So you need to prove yourself, take over more responsibility, and do it for a little bit, like 2 or 3 months. And when people see, okay, hey, this guy really pulled it off nicely, I think it's about time to give him a promotion.
Mm,
So as I mentioned before, I was responsible for building the architecture of Crisis 2, or a lot of the buildings, not all of them, but yeah, quite a few. And at one point, I got 2 or 3 people pushed into the building team, and had some sort of like mentorship role,
mm,
which was the introduction into the senior level responsibilities, basically. And I was lucky enough to have people really capable and good artists in that team that I mentored, and they did a great job. And it was, yeah, but that was basically the reason why I got the promotion, I think.
I mean, I'm guessing you enjoy the mentorship side of stuff quite a lot. So, like, we'll talk about this a bit later. But you dabbled in like lecturing and stuff such as that.
Mhm.
You
I
did you take that quite naturally?
No, it was I was a bit insecure in the beginning, because I was working for myself, and I never really felt like I'm experienced enough to teach people, which was not true. I did learn a lot, and I knew something, and I was good at making buildings, but I never really felt like I'm a guy who tells other people how to build things. I had to learn that. It didn't take too long, but it was something that didn't come to me by nature.
Yeah.
But now I'm used to it, so I can criticize people more openly without feeling bad.
But I think it's you love to it's almost like easy to hate sort of thing. What
Yeah.
so since you're bringing on to that sort of thing, the lead art role. Now I find this quite interesting because after speaking to Clinton last week, I'm just curious to see if you agree with this. When we're talking about like the different roles, because he's wore a lot of hats himself.
Mhm.
He mentioned that he felt like, as a lead artist, you take a bit of a backward step from art, and you take more of a not managerial role, but you lead people, you push them in the directions they need to go in. Would you agree? Is that a fair synopsis of a lead artist?
It is true. Yes, I definitely do less art than I used to do when I was a senior or principal. I see myself, and I think companies do use leads in a different way. Some people are like work like managers; they just do like Excel sheet work or whatever, and some people are more on the creative side, which luckily is the thing that I do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the lead artists at Crytek are like the extension of the art director. They make sure that the art direction gets executed in the best possible way. We basically enable people to do their best and help them to work smoothly, to communicate well with other departments. And since we have a pretty experienced team, we didn't have a lot of fluctuation in the art department. It is not really a difficult job to do. Everybody knows what they're doing, and which basically results in me having time to still do art. It's not as much as I used to have, but it's still something so I can learn new tools and workflows and so on. It's always a bit of a risky thing to go completely out of the production because you
Mm.
just
Do
if
you,
you don't do it for like 2 years, you totally detach and you don't know nothing anymore.
do you would you say you miss it a little bit? Like, you spoke earlier about, when you're junior to mid-level artist, you had your face at the grindstone a little bit. You're working really, really hard. You're churning out work like there's no tomorrow.
Mhm.
Do you feel like you miss it a little bit? Obviously, it's still good being a lead because you have this other side of responsibility. But would you say, hand on heart, you miss the art side a little bit, or are you okay with it?
Absolutely. I mean, the best time of my career was when I was locked up as a senior or principal artist, working on uh, my map in Crisis 3 with a really really awesome level designer, Chris K, and we were just having the best time of our lives. So that was like the best part. But being a lead is also pretty cool and interesting. It is good to see people grow and become better. It's very very satisfying, and it just makes sense. I mean, if you know how the company works, and I've been working there for so long that I can solve problems a lot easier and faster than other people that just joined the company. So I also need to think about like efficiency and so on, and I need to put my personal interests back a little bit to make sure that the company performs in the best way, or the art department. So it's a bit of my duty as well. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, like, we just speaking about your like duty to the company.
Hmm.
One, I'm guessing you have a attachment to Crytek. You have to. There's no way you work there for as long as you have and not have like, a personal attachment to them.
Hmm.
What is it that's like made you want to stay there? And I mean this in like I'm not saying when people move studios it's for the wrong reasons. It's just people need a change and they want to switch up.
Uh-huh.
What has kept you there for so long? Because obviously you must love it there. There's no way you stay there for that long unless you're a masochist, I guess.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you really enjoy it.
There's several reasons. One is the projects. I mean, was able to work on Crisis 1, 2, 3, which is a game in a jungle, a game in a city, and then something in between, and then now Hunt Showdown, which is like a totally different setting. It is first person. It's triple A quality. I have access to a good engine, so this is a really good foundation for an environment artist in the first place. And then I am pretty close. I do live in Frankfurt, and it's pretty close to my hometown, where all
Mm.
my friends are and my family is, and I have a pretty big family. And my wife, we're married since almost 2 years now, was also nearby, and she works here in Frankfurt as well. It's not only the job that makes you basically stay in a place; it's also the comfort of the surrounding. If I am a happy person, and I would need to make a compromise on something, in order to go somewhere else. And I never really felt like this is necessary.
Yeah.
I might be in a really special spots, but I never felt bad about that decision. Yeah.
No, no doubt. I mean, it's clearly done. You know, like I said, you're home. You're close to home with your family. You've. I mean, the company's looked after you. They've approached you with these roles where you've progressed. So it's
Mm,
it's good to see. It's good to hear as well. It's like, I do hear a lot of, the norm is to shift around, and I've got to shift around if I want to get promoted. I've got to like
mm.
apply to that promotion role. Whereas it's nice to hear of a company to say, right, this guy's really killing it. Like, fuck it, let's reward this guy. It's really nice to see that.
Yeah, I mean, there was times when good friends left. They went to the States or somewhere else, and they went to companies that on paper are absolutely amazing or whatever. And I, in the beginning, I just taught myself that I am a happy person, even if I did not believe it at the time. I just did it because I just didn't want to feel bad. It was some sort of like self protection
Mm,
mechanism or whatever. And I just like trying to tell myself, okay, this in a good position. I wanted to become a game developer. Now you are, and you're close to family. You have your wife or girlfriend here. You, you know, but it turned out that in the long run, it was actually true. And I see like how other people who left didn't become happier.
hmm.
They're just it's just the same. They're just somewhere else.
Yeah,
If you do that for like a longer time, you realize that it's no like special thing that I learned in my weird bubble here. But yeah, I did not regret it. Let's say it like this. I had a really good time here, and I'm close to the people I really care about.
that's great to hear, man. That's really nice to
Mhm.
hear. You mentioned Hunt. Now, I've got to say, I came across you from Hunt Showdown Art, and I could tell with this game, like you go through the crisis stuff to this. You really had the chance to stretch your legs a little bit in like the mood creation and the tone setting and stuff you have with
Mhm.
scenes. Is
Mhm.
that something like you? I'm guessing. Did you like really enjoy that change up? Because it looks like to me, Crisis was this technical, almost sterile, like ex- graphical showcase of art, where this is like it's a showcase of cinematic creation and tone
Mhm.
creation. Is that something you really enjoyed the change up on? Because I mean, I'm looking through like the Hunt Showdown stuff, and I'm just like, you really get a sense of atmosphere, which, with respect, I think Crisis has a slightly different feel to.
Mhm.
You don't have a similar feel to what you do at Hunt. Now, how was that? Did it come again? Did it come naturally to you, this type of thing, or was it a shock to the system to be doing this type of thing, or was it like, nah, this is, you know, you just took to it really easy?
Yeah. Magnus, the art director, he has been my art director ever since I joined Crytek, basically, and
Oh, wow.
we share, let's say, the same taste, or we like the same things, so similar things, not always, but in most cases. And we were always big fans of like a more mature, like a gritty look. We started thinking about the hunt visuals when we were also watching TV shows like True Detective, and we are big fans of the movie Seven, and all those things. Basically, we were the ones who decided how it's supposed to look like. So it definitely was something that came straight from our hearts. We enjoyed creating that world and building the world in general, and we wanted to tell creepy stories in it. And in comparison to Crisis, where I mean, we focused on art a lot, and we weren't really so much into the game. And I mean, people complained about that in the past, that we like Crisis games are tech demos, which is not entirely true. But at this time, we really wanted to put the game in the first place. It was like gameplay first for everything, and that's why, like with this game, my response I became almost like half a level designer. I was doing a lot of layout work and a lot of iterations on where things are placed rather than how things look like. That was I grew a lot as a developer through like in that project, because I extended my horizon a lot more towards gameplay, and I made a lot more compromises on the visual side than I did on the game side, or we did on the game side, because it was like the number one thing that we wanted to achieve. Like fun was above everything, even visuals. But
Really?
I think it still turned out to be quite a pretty game, and we're really
I was
proud
gonna
of it.
say that's surprising to hear because I mean I look at the game and visually it's like damn like there's not it don't look like there's much compromise there, dude. Like it's one of my favorite looking games. It's what inspired helped me with my scene like and analyzing some of the tone you have in your
Hmm.
artwork and the way you create tone and mood. It's like one of the main things I observed and I really love about this game. So to hear you say like, oh, we had to, you compromise. I'm like, really? Where? It doesn't look like it.
That's that. This is where the consistency or the lack of fluctuation in the art team plays a big role. This is the team that went through, or a large part of it that went through Crisis, or the entire Crisis franchise. Then a couple of people from Rise and new guys that joined the company recently. Having like those 3, 4, 5 veterans in the team really helped. They know the engine well. We play along with each other. Same goes for the level designers. And once you have that team that knows each other so well, their weaknesses and their strengths, things become a lot easier and
Mm.
faster. It might look like a lot more work than it actually was at the end visually. We did not spend so much time like polishing. Uh, we're still doing it. We like it's early access game. We keep sending out updates, so um, we still fixing bugs and visual glitches here and there. So it's not done.
Okay, that's cool. Like, so you say you
Yeah.
got you like the same team from the Crisis games. Being a lead, so also
Um,
you're managing a team.
yeah.
Is it hard for them to? So it's one thing for you to adapt to it, because obviously that you look at Crisis and they look at this. They're worlds apart in terms of tone, in terms of style, in terms of what the subject matter. Was it hard? Was it difficult managing a team and bringing them through that transition period, or did they all take to it as well pretty naturally as going through because they were the sort of the Crytek veterans?
Um, I was working on Hunt Showdown from the very first day on, and I did a lot of mistakes when it comes to basically the execution of the vision that we had. And it took a while for us to nail it in 3D instead of just looking at the references on paper, the mood boards and everything. And from all of the mistakes that I've made in the early early production, I basically knew that what I had to do with others to teach them how to not do it. So it already helped me to kind of realize what people might struggle with when they work on a new setting, coming from something more sci-fi. And then you start to get some sort of like routine when it comes to giving feedback, and you slowly figure out what it is that actually makes Hunt look like Hunt. When it comes to where go do the details go, how much grime do you have, how much like shapes versus noise, and the colors, the lighting, and so on. It Everybody needs some time to get used to it, but it since I made all those mistakes by myself, I knew what to do
Could you
basically. Yeah.
elaborate on the mistake? I don't want to show you up anything on live on stream,
Mhm.
but like what mistakes was it you sort of consciously noticed and had to rectify? Like, is this stuff you could talk about? Like, it'd be very interesting to
Y-
know what they are.
yeah, from like make, making things look too pristine or
Mm.
too muddy, too noisy. Readability was one of the things that we had to work on a lot because it's a multiplayer game. You need to know where the enemies are. They need to read well in the environment, but we still wanted to do that creepy atmosphere where everything evil could hide somewhere in a corner, whatever. It's a different thing to balance out. Um, Colors, lighting, like details. Those things were the points that I had to learn a lot about, and that I struggled with in the beginning. The technical part, like how to make the assets, I mean, it was pretty much the same as in former games, with the difference that this one is a PBR game and the other games weren't. But
Yeah.
that's just a technical thing. It didn't take a lot of time to get used to that.
I have to admit, readability is like one of the things in games. It's like it's an artist's worst nightmare because it's like you work on an asset in isolation because you can almost
Mhm.
get tunnel vision on an asset. So you're like there working on a prop, you make it look amazing. You finish your substance renders. You're like, all right, let's bang it into the engine. Yeah, it looks great in the engine, but then like someone from the outside in will come and have a look at it and they'll be like, yeah, it doesn't read well, and you're like, ah,
Mm.
it's like it's a
That's
really
that
hard thing to get used to.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Alex. Uh, that this is one of the things that especially beginners do wrong, is that they see their asset. When you start with just a prop or whatever, mostly, and not bigger scenes, is that you treat it as the main point or
Mm,
the subject matter, and it's in reality, it the game is the subject matter, the environment is just the backdrop. And if we would treat every single prop as a hero asset, everything would basically ask for attention.
yeah,
Everything has that special detail that makes it stand out, or that color accent, and those kind of things. And suddenly you have a super noisy environment because everybody wants his prop to look the coolest. And
yeah,
what you need to realize is that things need to blend together to a backdrop. The figures are the subject matter. The next door, or the button that you have to press to open a door, or whatever. Those are the things that need to stay in focus, and not your prop. And once you basically realize that, you are a lot less concerned about, like, if a chamfer is cool or not.
yeah. Actually, I want to elaborate this a bit because
Mhm.
this is something I've only recently, past year, really wrapped my head around. The importance of, like, I think this comes what you're talking about with, the bigger picture being the important thing. I find a
Mhm.
lot of when I speak to a lot of people who are like new to the industry, they don't understand the importance of a block out. They worry about the prop in like I said, they worry about the prop in isolation. Make this really beautiful prop, and then it's like once you put it into the scene, it don't quite look right, or like
Mhm.
it doesn't read well. To use a cliche. I was wondering if you just talk a little bit about blocking out and the importance of it in your workflow and in your company's workflow, because I do think it's something that is extremely undervalued in
Mhm.
terms of you get your composition and everything looking right, and then you can figure out from there which props need the extra attention and which props don't.
Mhm.
So it'd be cool to hear like how you approach it, or like I don't know if it's a personal thing, like you approach it one way, or it's like the studio approaches it this way.
We do a lot of blockouts. Especially when you make a multiplayer game, you are going to be confronted with a lot of iterations, a lot more iterations than you would do with a linear single player game. So you need to make sure that those iterations are cheap. You don't have to rework or push around like thousands of polygons. You want to keep it as simple as possible. So this is just a on convenience thing. So you can basically get to something that's fun to play as quickly as possible. But I think the reason why blockouts are often so unpopular, like within environment artists, is because they don't understand why they are necessary. Somebody just tells them to block it out, and then they do it, but they don't know what to do with it. They don't know like how to play test it. They need to be more involved in the game and what the game is about and what to pay attention to. This should needs to be taught by the mentors as well, that they learn to read an environment and what to look for, and where the subject matter is, and how the leading works, and how you can use lighting to get there, and so on. And often people are just put on modeling and texturing, and they're not really involved in the game. And this is something, probably one of the reasons why people don't get the blockout thing. And I mean, yeah, you've blocked it out, but what now? It's like,
Yeah.
uh,
You get all that
but
competition stuff down, don't you? Like you just said, leading the eye and all this sort of stuff. That all comes from the block out, doesn't it? Like you got your concept art, your key shots.
yeah.
Your
If
block out
if you
have to
give
realize
people
that.
more responsibility and let them place lights on their own, even though they might not be the final ones. I mean, the lighting artist should always do the job, but if you give them the freedom to kind of make more than just the texture and the mesh, basically, they tend to pay more attention to that, from my experience.
Yeah, and I guess like you said, them being more involved in the game as a game, like sort of detaching the fact that it's art, which I think is probably is one of the most difficult things, is detaching the fact that this is art and it's a game and there's a consumer who's going to consume it.
Mhm.
I think that's a very good point, that them actually playing the block out they've made and like, does this feel right? Does this look right? And detaching the fact that you made it
Mhm.
is hugely important. And I don't think, like you said, I don't think that's actually done enough. And also the mentoring side of stuff, where you said they should be mentored and taught about the lighting, even though like you said they're texture artists or they're prop artists. Just having that understanding and context to what their props are going to be doing will probably lead to better props in the long run.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Absolutely, yeah.
So why do you think that doesn't happen as much? Like, I know, like you said, yeah, I'm gonna assume that you guys do it a lot because the way you're speaking and the way you're talking about it, it sounds like that's part of your culture.
Hmm.
Is it time? Is it budgets? Is it, it costs, money to have an artist doing something that isn't necessarily what they're paid to do? What's the reason behind it?
Um, when you're an environment artist, you are in some sort of like in between position. You're basically the hub where a lot of things come together, and you might step on other people's toes. You basically touch the level design area a lot, and maybe level designers don't want to let you do the block out or be part of it. And there's also lighting artists, and they want to do it on their own, and it you're somewhere stuck in between all those roles and disciplines, and it's not easy to kind of maneuver through that difficult. It's a very political thing as well, and
Mm.
you need to, like, communication is the key, and you really need to make people feel like they're sitting in the same boat, and they don't mean any bad when they push like a box around or whatever. It's a collaboration, and we at Crytek learned that during Crisis 3, when we basically created goal-oriented groups, when we put a level designer and a environment artist together, and they work on one map together all of the time until the game is done. And in the past, there was the level designers, and there was like the guys who make the assets, and then the level designer plays the assets, and then the artists got angry because the level designers used them in the wrong way. Those kind of things. It doesn't make any sense. It's so much better if you just mix up the teams and you make them. Everybody should feel like a game developer rather than that very specific role that they're filling in. That really helps to even out a lot of those problems.
It's almost like a culture thing more than anything.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really interesting to hear you say it like that. Where you're working like these little mini teams. It's funny actually when you're saying you gotta do it in such a way where you don't upset people and there's like a bit of a political element to it. It's one of
Mhm.
these things, this soft skills, which so when you talk to people about they want to progress in a career, I'm a really good artist. I could make amazing looking assets. I what's the so once you're in studio, getting into the industry, fair enough. Like your first job, you just want to be a killer artist. That's just like that's 100% necessary.
Mhm.
Once you're actually in the studio, how much of a balance is it in terms of preference? Like I always think it's about a 60-40 balance. 60% of your skill your value has to be in your art, you're a good artist, and then 40% is your soft skills, being able to work within a team, like you said, navigate these personalities and these roles without upsetting
Mhm.
anybody. How much value do you put on the sort of the personality side of stuff opposed to the hard skills within Crytek?
Mhm. We have hired people in the past that were really good, like from a like hard skill point of view, but they cause problems because of their personality. And then we slowly, I mean, this is not like a switch that you just flip. Slowly learned to hire people in a different way. Um, we were more careful when we basically talked to them and met them in person, and paid more attention to whether they might create some issues within the team. We would rather make a hard skill compromise than a soft skill compromise. It's a lot easier to teach somebody to do a texture in a better way rather than basically making him a better person. That's a lot more work to
Mm.
basically invest. And when you think about it, if you have a negative person in your company, it's who complains a lot, who is not nice to people, he can so easily turn other people into negative people as well, and then you
Yes.
suddenly have that uh, um, like a chain reaction, and so you have a pretty bad mood and vibe in the team in general. And
Yes.
it takes like twice or three times the effort to turn the negative people back into positive
Mm.
people, and it's just not worth it. Then I would rather not have the perfect sculpts. I would rather have like a guy who sculpts decently and is a nice guy, and I like working with him. You spend so much time together every day. um, yeah, it can only agree to what you said. It's like almost equally important to be a nice guy than to
Makes
be
me
a good artist.
speaking about that, like I'm terrified. So in my studio is a very very small studio, and we're all like
Mhm.
best friends, like a family. And I'm like super terrified of like you get that wrong person because it's on the person, the people are hiring. It's like you make that wrong mistake, you make the wrong call, and it's so much work to undo the negative atmosphere that could be created by just one person. Are
Yeah.
you involved in? So are you actually involved in the hiring process? You'll hire, interview, that all that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Since Crisis 3, when we hired new artists to join the Crisis 3 team, this is basically when I started to basically get involved in hiring as well. Yes.
So there's like I want to say it's a rumor, more like a myth, I suppose is the best way to describe it. That when you interview somebody, if someone's come for the face-to-face interview, by that point
Hmm.
you've already decided. This is the sort of the generalization that once you've invited someone for the interview, you've already made your mind up that their art is up to scratch. At this point, you're gauging their personality. Would you say that's a pretty fair statement, or do you think it's not quite that?
It's true. Yes, it's true. Once you passed, at least for us, once you pass the phone interview, it's just all about you as a person and not about your skill anymore.
Hmm? How much do you? So this is it's probably more of a curious thing for me.
Mhm.
Um, when you say they're gonna have to, like, obviously personality is a huge thing. That doesn't necessarily mean you want people who are just, yes people. You want people who have opinions and thoughts of their own, who are willing to, if they think something's wrong, say it's wrong. Because I think that's something some people think is they think when they, I want to be, if I want to get to the studio, I want to get along, and like they're in their heads, I think a lot of people think to get along, you got to go along.
Mhm.
And now for me, I'm like, I completely disagree, and that might be down to my personality because I'm quite a bullish person anyway. But I
Okay.
like to have people correctly disagree. Have a discussion and say if they. What I don't like is I think this is wrong, and that's what they say. Like if you think something's wrong, have a solution as well. Do you
Mhm.
think that's fair to say with Crytek as well? Like you don't. I'm guessing you don't just go, and it's obviously this is a generalization. You don't just want people who are like super nice and like yes man and yeah you're right you're right you're right. How much do you
Oh no,
value the
that
people who are able to go? Let's say for example you say I want you to do this. I'm guessing you do value the people who are like, okay, you know what? I know you said that, but I really disagree. What about
Mhm.
this? Because I think there's a bit of a
um,
stereotype that people have to just almost do as they're told, and I really don't think that's the case. I truly believe that's not the case. From the outside looking in, I
uh,
think people believe that.
I think what you say is absolutely right. I mean, when you are a starter, you like start as an intern, junior, whatever. I think what counts is your willingness to learn and like suck all the knowledge up and become better and better every day. But the more responsibility you have, the higher your rank is when you join a new company, the more of a critical thinker you need to be, and you need the ability to criticize things. I mean, you get hired to tell people that something is not correct or whatever. You need that. This is an absolute must. Um, Especially when you are in a higher rank, you shouldn't have an issue with telling people that they should improve certain things. And I'm like you. I think being honest and straight with feedback is the right way to do it. You don't if you do it in the correct way and you can argue why you feel like certain things need to be improved, and if you have suggestions to how to make it better, I think it's absolutely fine. I know everybody's cool with that.
Yeah, I do get it's my biggest peeve. Like, and it's the only thing that sort of ticks me off is when it's like, oh, that's not right, and that's the end of their statement, and it's like, well, okay, if you're gonna voice why something's not right, at least have a solution to that point. Because otherwise, you just because I say if you're critiquing, you're saying something's wrong and you're giving a solution. If you're whining, you just say something's wrong.
Hmm.
So yeah, I have to be that is like my sort of biggest peeve when dealing with that sort of stuff. Since you're talking about interviews, and I know a lot of friends at the moment going through this interview process. Just and if you don't want to say, feel free. Is there any like instant turn-offs where someone's in an interview and they say or do something and you're just like, don't, hands in the air, like, obviously you don't say that to them, but in your head you've just switched off, you're done with this person, or things that really put you off. Is there anything that would help people go through the interview process at the moment?
You, oh, yeah. I mean, every person is different, and met like all kinds of different characters. I had so many phone calls, and they all went differently. So it's really hard to tell. I've never, luckily, been in a position where somebody was so bad that it was just a waste of time. That never happened. But yeah, sometimes you feel okay after like 20 minutes in. It's not going to. It's probably not the right guy or the right woman. Um, that that happens. And if you want to increase your chances, I mean, there's not that many tips that I can give, but besides the ordinary advice that if a company hires somebody, then they want them to already do the job.
Mm-hmm.
There's always some room for improvements, and I mean, we always teach people certain things. But if you, let's say, have a portfolio full of like stylized assets and you applied Crytek, then it's really hard for me as a lead to see whether you can pull off photorealistic environments or not. I cannot guess and hope, hey, maybe his stylized stuff is good. Let's hope that he can do photorealistic assets as well. You need to be in the ballpark roughly, and so we can really see it or make an art test, and then just prepare and figure out what the company's about. And try to understand what kind of culture there is, and kind of try to, with everything you say in a phone interview, to kind of play along those like core strengths of the team that you're applying for.
What I okay, I'm gonna guess you're not gonna be able to answer this, so I apologize. But there's obviously a lot of like at the moment in your browser Twitter, there's a lot of negative stuff about art tests.
Mm-hmm.
How does like I said, if you can't answer, please feel free to say. But how do you go about structuring? Like from your point of view, you structure an art test.
Mm-hmm.
One, do you in your head have like what's an ideal length of an art test, and also what are you looking for from like when you set an art test? I mean, is it like every artist will have to do an art test? That's just compulsory. Or is it like oh, they haven't shown this particular skill, so we're going to set an art test? Is the art test unique per person depending on what they do? Like, is there any light you can shine on that sort of stuff?
And we at Crytek use an artist to figure out whether the person that is applying is able to do the job that we need him to do when he starts. We only do that when the portfolio doesn't show it clearly. So we don't use it to basically have an obstacle in the way to figure out whether they really want it or not. I think that is a stupid thing. I don't really agree to companies that do it in that way. So it is for us to see whether a person can do it, and also for the applicant to really give him a second chance to really prove that he can do certain things. If the portfolio is not convincing enough, if certain things are missing, like I said, uh, too little photorealistic things in there or whatever, or it's all medieval and we do sci-fi, then we can say, okay, he is a good modeler, but we don't know how he will do with like sci-fi panel designs or whatever. Then we give him a test, and sometimes we even only take a fraction of it, maybe only the texturing part, sometimes only the high poly modeling part, really depending on where we are not convinced yet. And what we structure it is that we have like two milestones. First, the block out. So when we see that somebody is really off track, we can interfere and say, "Hey, you misunderstood something. I think you should rework certain parts again because we actually wanted to go in this direction and not that." And then we have a second milestone a little bit further in where we have like a second run of feedback. So it's a lot more work, but uh, as I said before, we really want to figure out whether somebody is at doing this or not, and rather instead of like having this extra obstacle that is just there for punishment reasons or whatever.
Dude, you know what? You know how great it is to hear that, because I hear horror stories and I speak to certain people and I'm like, fuck, man, that just sounds really shit. And I'm like, but the fact that you guys are like tailoring it to like, right, we haven't had this question answered, we need that answering before we move on. I'm like that in my head. That's what our test is for. But then you do see it in like social medias and online, and obviously you only see the negative side of stuff, and I understand that. But to hear that you guys structure in that way, it's such a breath of fresh air to hear that. Really,
I
really happy
mean,
to hear that.
we have the same interest. A person really wants to work here, and we really need an out. If somebody is so close, then there needs to be a way to figure it out. It kind of makes sense when you think about it. But
So
I can see how like people, not people, but companies don't do it because it's actually a lot of work.
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But you want, like, the way I see it is also you want the person to start on the best foot. Now, if you put
Mhm.
them on like a grueling art test, which is super long or super difficult or super tedious, they're almost starting on the wrong foot. They might not be happy about how much work they had to do, or how many hoops you had to jump through. So the fact there are like tangible reasons, and you structure your art test in such a way, I think people wouldn't get that sour taste in their mouth when they start, because they're like, obviously I'm guessing you explain this to them as well when they get the art test and what you're looking for.
Exactly.
The
We
fact
we
that you do
do.
that, it just
Yeah.
helps. I just wanted to sort of shift gears a little bit towards the end of this.
Okay.
I want to talk about the CryEngine. So at the moment, so in about like between like 2006 to like 2010, CryEngine was like hot shit. Like it was, if you knew CryEngine, like people really admired you. It was a really good engine. It was like, and I'm not saying that it isn't now, but this is what I want to get onto.
Mhm.
But at the moment, it seems like in the public forums on like Twitter and social media and Artstation and all this sort of stuff, it's like the conversation is happening between Unreal Engine and Unity. And I'm just curious to see what your thoughts are on this in terms of why is CryEngine not as much in the public eye, if that makes
Mhm.
sense? Because I mean, it's a free
Mhm.
engine, right?
It is free, as
Yeah.
free as the
So
other engines. Yeah.
it confuses me because it's a really great engine. Obviously, produced some amazing games on it. Why
Mhm.
do you think it's not as in the public eye as the other two? Because you go through. If I went through like Artstation and just browsed it, the majority of the environments and the game scenes you'll look at are Unreal, Unity, Unreal, Unity, Unreal,
Mhm.
Unity. I see very little CryEngine, and
Mhm.
it baffles me because the late 2000s is like it was really popular. People
Yeah.
really admired it. So I was wondering, why do you think, being that you've been there like throughout this period, you've been through this transition, why do you think it fell off in
Um,
popularity?
I mean, in the beginning, the engine business was a totally different business. You sold engines only to companies, and it was really unlikely for normal students or hobbyists to get access to the technology. That changed a little bit here and there with like UDK, and when we had like Sandbox 2 released, you can just modify existing games and so on. And back then, we just the engine was just a side product of the the development that we did on games, and we just made it accessible for people outside of Crytek. Um, and ever since that time, we put a lot more, a lot of effort went into games and the shift like of platforms and so on. And on the other hand, like Unity and Epic were really doing a good job to basically put a lot of effort on the engine, more than they did on games. I mean, Unity does not do any games. And this is just my like how I see it from like personally,
Of
from not
course.
being part of the engine team. And I think uh, the the comforts that you had, the accessibility, the documentation, and so on, is something that we could have done better in the past, which we changed a year, 2 years ago with CryEngine 5. We try to do a much better job, and I think we really do. The engine is a lot more accessible, at least for what I heard from people who started using it. We pay a lot more attention to document the features properly, to unify the tools, to make it easier to get into them, and so on. I think it's just a matter of accessibility and documentation that makes people to use something. The easier it is to use, the less of a pain in the ass it is. The more likely it is that it ends up on somebody's computer.
Yeah, I really want to see it come back round because I like seeing the different engines because you see strengths and
Mhm.
weaknesses between the engines, and then you sort of diversify the art community because people start using different engines and you get very different looking games. Because there was a time like when the UDK was the main engine, like for the hobbyists, you
Mhm.
could spot a UDK environment. It just looks like a UDK engine game.
Mhm.
Uh, and I like, and it's sort of the line's been blurred a bit now between like sort of Unreal and Unity, especially because Unity stepped up the game a lot. But there is still like subtle tells. So I'd love to see like CryEngine come back up a bit more, the popularity thing, because it's just like it's another like segment of the art community that you get to see.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, the guys in the CryEngine department are doing a kick-ass job. They have awesome things cooking, and yeah, I mean, I work with the engine every day, and I really enjoy it. It's what I like about the most about it is just instant. everything is instant. We don't bake anything. It's everything is real time, and you just plug a light in and you see how it will look like in the final game and so on. It's very hands on, and there's very little things I need to do to kind of see how it will end up looking and so on. It's very instant, and it's for an environment artist. I mean, and I've been working with the engine as an environment artist most of the time. It's a dream to work with the engine. It's really cool.
I'd like to hope you like it. I mean, you've had 13 years of it, so if you didn't like it, you'd be punishing yourself a hell of a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I hear stories from other big companies that are not. They don't put a lot of effort in like tool development, and you still have to create materials and text files and stuff like that. I mean, yeah, there's. I think I'm in a really lucky position to work for a company that does an engine.
Oh man, that's so cool to hear. I want to just wrap this up with one question, and
Yeah.
I never tell the guests this question because I always want to put them on the spot a little bit. And this one might be a bit weird for you because I don't think you would change anything. But if you could speak to Marcel from 19-year-old entering the games industry, getting into it, is there any advice or things you'd say to him now that you wish you knew back then? Like if one bit of golden advice, what would you give to a 19-year-old version of yourself? And bear in mind, it's kind of hard for you because you've literally gone junior, mid, senior, principal, lead. Like, so everything's gone right for you so far. But 19-year-old you, what piece of advice would you love to give to yourself?
Oh, that's a tough one.
I'm sorry.
I think I um, was so obsessed with my job at times that I forgot to enjoy it. To also like enjoy the job. It's like I was always too. It's like too scared to not deliver the expected quality and so on. I was like, it stresses you out a lot when you are surrounded by really talented people. And when I look back at it now, I only realizing that certain times I had working as games were absolutely amazing. So if I would give myself like a tip that okay, appreciate the people that you work with. They might be gone soon and work somewhere else. Really enjoy it, lean back, realize the position that you're in, the game that you're working on, and kind of soak up everything. And don't forget about that. See the positive things a lot more, and don't stress yourself out too much about getting criticized and so on.
I think there's a couple of friends in the Discord who could really do with that advice. That's really great advice, dude.
Yeah, it is a dream job after all, and very often we are too insecure to get a bad comment on Artstation or to think about what would artist XYZ think about it, because his opinion means a lot to me, and then we do that at a point where we stop enjoying the process of creating the content, and I've ended up in that position many times, and I think that would be the most valuable tip that I would give to myself.
That's a pretty damn good tip. I'll give you that. So you think about on your spot. Well played. That's decent. That. I'm afraid we've got to wrap it up now. Marcel, dude, I really appreciate you coming on. It means a lot to me, and I know a lot of the guys in the chat. I think they really appreciate some of the information you've dished out today. So I've got to say, personal thank you. Really appreciate it.
It has been a great pleasure, Alex. Thank you so much for doing that podcast. It really makes the games industry a better place. And thanks for everybody who listened. If you have any questions, feel free to approach me on whatever, Artstation, Twitter, Discord. Thank you, Alex.
Right,
had a good
guys,
time.
just so you know, down below there's a few links to check out. So there's the Empire tab. If you click on that, it will take you to a link to join the Dynasty Empire. I really recommend any artist out there join it. It's full of great people and a great community to be a part of. The VODs will be up shortly on Spotify, SoundCloud, iTunes and YouTube. The links are down below. And if you follow either my Twitter or the Artstation blog, there will be all the latest updates and news to do with this podcast on there. Once again, finally, thank you everyone in chat. I really appreciate you guys stopping by. And Marcel, have a good rest of your day, bro.